In today's video, we take a look at a haunted cruise ship and experiences people have said to have had while on the ship. The ship is known as the CARNIVAL CONQUEST and set sail for the very first time in 2002. What makes these stories even more terrifying is the place it set sail from. The ship left for its maiden voyage from New Orleans, a place known for its dark magic and voodoo. The ship has a capacity of 4,150 passengers, including the crew members. And among those 4,000 plus passengers, many have experienced unexplainable paranormal activity. With an estimated 200 annual passenger deaths at sea during cruising, you're bound to have some visitors. In one mysterious story from the CARNIVAL CONQUEST, a woman was feeling ill and decided to stay in her cabin rather than going to dinner with her husband. Instead, she laid down on the bed for a quick nap. She quickly fell asleep after he left, only to be awakened by a very gentle touch on her leg. Convinced it was her husband checking on her, she smiled and went back to sleep without ever opening her eyes. After all, who else would be coming into their room and touching her leg without saying a word? When her husband actually did return from dinner, she casually asked him about it. He responded, "I didn't come back into the room until just now." The woman was surprised, but not distressed. She felt nothing threatening in the touch and thought perhaps it could have been a dream. The remainder of the cruise continued without incident. In a fascinating twist, she and her husband attended a seance after returning from the cruise. The medium asked her if she had been on a cruise and whether anything strange happened to her. She replied in the affirmative, explaining to the medium about the experience of something gently touching her leg. The medium claimed she was in contact with the spirit that touched her. The spirit wanted to reassure the woman there was no intent to frighten or disturb her, just comfort her. Now this next experience, I want you to imagine. A young couple was asleep for a few hours in their cabin when they suddenly awoke at the same time. They looked at each other and began to scan the room to find the source of what had awakened them. They quickly discovered it standing at the foot of the bed. In the relative darkness of the room, they were both able to make out the shape of a tall man wearing a long, dark trench coat. Well, that sight alone would be enough to disturb most of us. Add to it the fact that he was holding some type of weapon in his hand. The young man quickly reached for a lamp by their bed, and in an instant, the room flooded with light. The dark, threatening figure had quite literally disappeared into thin air. They got up and searched every inch of the room and verified the door and balcony were securely locked from the inside. There was no way a physical being could have left the cabin without them seeing him, nor was there any way someone could have made his way in. To make matters worse, they struggled with the sounds of someone knocking on the balcony window of their cabin in the middle of the ocean, only to discover there was no one there. Now that couple wasn't the only couple to experience a phantom intruder on the CARNIVAL CONQUEST. Another couple was comfortably at rest in their bed one night. The room was dark and everything was quiet until they heard their cabin door open and close. The woman would call out, asking if someone came in. As they sat up in bed, they heard the cabinet door open, followed by the safe door. By this time, the young man's eyes had adjusted to the darkness, just enough to barely make out the shape of a man standing in their room. As he squinted to see better, he could tell the man seemed to have on a stewardess uniform. Shocked, he watched as the man put his hand into the safe, then turned to face the bed where the young couple sat frightened. In a split second, he pulled something out of the safe as he silently watched them. The young woman reached over to turn the light on, but the instant light filled the room, the intruder was gone. The cabinet door was still standing open, and so was the safe. The balcony door was still secured, as was the door to their cabin, both locked from the inside. As the realization of the nature of their midnight intruder dawned on them, the couple said that the hair on their backs and neck stood up. Needless to say, after that experience, sleep was the last thing this couple was gonna get. Now this next story, a woman was dressing for dinner one warm summer evening in her cabin. As she was admiring her reflection in the mirror, she heard a male voice very distinctly say, "You look beautiful tonight." She quickly turned with a smile to thank her husband for the compliment, only to realize her husband was sitting on the balcony with the door shut. There was no one else in the room except her. The TV was on, but it was turned to an all-music station. She finally decided it could have possibly just been someone's voice from the hallway. However, she was a little rattled because she had minor hearing problems and usually needed to have people repeat things if they weren't near her. To think she could hear a phrase so clearly from out in the hall just didn't add up. But she decided to finish getting ready and just put the incident out of her mind. A few minutes later, she heard the same voice and the same phrase, "You look beautiful tonight." It seemed a bit closer this time, and it was without a doubt the same voice she had heard before. She rushed to the balcony where her husband was still sitting, opened the door, and told him her experience. While he did believe her story, he hadn't heard a thing, and was just as puzzled as she was. Now there's just something terrifying about being in the middle of the ocean at night while the moon glistens along the water, or being stuck in a cabin with no windows, in complete darkness. Now I want to know what you thought about this video down below in the comments, and if you have had any paranormal experiences on a cruise ship. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a nice big thumbs up.